All right, we're good to go. Welcome, city councilors and our guests. It is now 6:30, Monday, May 18th, and we will now start the Herons Meeting of the Springfield City Council. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll as I admit Councilor Davila into the room?
Councilor Gomez? Present. Councilor Whitfield?
Present.
Absent. Councilor Davila? I know he's coming. I'll come back. Councilor
Okay,
Fenton?
thank you.
Present.
Present. Councilor Curran?
Present.
Present. Councilor Ramos?
Present.
Present. Councilor Walsh?
Present.
Present. Councilor Williams?
Present.
Present. Councilor Allen?
Present.
Present. Councilor Letterman?
Present.
Present. Councilor Edwards?
Present.
Present. Councilor Brown? Absent. Councilor Hurst?
Present.
Present. Councilor Davila?
Present.
Present.
Will the council and their guests please rise, and our guests please rise for a moment of silence? Will you please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge
Pledge of
allegiance
allegiance to the
Flag.
flag of the
United
United States of America and to the republic
Republic
for which it stands,
stands
one nation,
one nation,
under God, indivisible,
liberty, and justice.
liberty and justice for all.
Liberty and justice for all.
So thank you, councilors. Please bear with us. This is our first remote Herons meeting. So there may be some technical issues, and we'll try to get them resolved as quickly and efficiently as possible. Madam Clerk, can you please start us off just by giving the council a quick overview in terms of how this is going to work?
So what we're doing, because the hearings meeting has to be remote, we also have to allow people to provide testimony on the special permits and on zone changes. So what we've done is we are allowing people to testify not on live, but beforehand. So we allowed people to send in an email or to call the council office with any testimony they had on both of the special permits tonight. We cut that off today at 12 p.m., so that we could have it all together for the council. As of tonight's meeting, there was no testimony. What we'll do is we will continue any hearing that's open tonight. We're going to continue it to allow people to rebut whatever the petitioners have to say this evening. We'll take the testimony, and then if it's audio, I will play it for you at the next hearings meeting in June. And if it is an email, I will read it to you. So everyone has the chance to hear it simultaneously. For the June meeting, we'll be cutting testimony off that Friday at 12 p.m. by June 26th. And for the August hearing on 8/17, we'll be cutting the testimony off on August 14th at 12 p.m.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And I just want to start off by thanking Phil Dromey, as well as our Solicitor Pakula, who have worked really hard in conjunction with Focus Springfield to try to make this a reality. I'd imagine that there are going to be some hiccups, but we'll give this first hearings meeting a shot. We'll see how it goes, and then we'll kind of retool once we see, once we see what has ultimately occurred and whether we are effective or not. So bear with us. Madam Clerk, will you please call the first item on the agenda?
The first item on the agenda is for a special permit drive-up service window at 705 Liberty Street.
Thank you. As I'm letting Councilor Brown into the room, so we'll just acknowledge him in a moment. So thank you, Madam Clerk. The proponents will have 20 minutes to speak in favor of this special permit, followed by the opponents who will have 20 minutes to speak in opposition of the special permit. At that point in time, I will open it up for the council to ask questions of the petitioners. And on both of these items this evening, as Madam Clerk said, we did not receive any testimony. Normally, I don't ask the council to ask questions of the petitioner until we've had an opportunity for folks to rebut. But I think these are new and interesting times, and so I'm going to try for this particular Herons meeting to open the floor for questions so that when we reconvene at our next meeting, we can hopefully go straight to a vote. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. So we'll start with the first petitioner. Can you please state your name and address for the record? Speaking in favor of this special permit.
Counselor, I'm sorry. Can I recognize Counselor Brown first, please?
You certainly can, Madam Clerk.
Counselor Brown?
Yes, present.
Present. Thank you. Sorry about that.
And if I may add, I'm not 100% of 100% being a new member, Mr. President. There is a certain petitioner who's not available to speak on their behalf. I'll address it later, but I'm not 100% sure. I know you know how to. You're the attorney, sir. You know you and Mr. Fitton.
So we'll address that when we get to it. I believe it's the second petition on the docket, so we can certainly address it when we get to it. So
thank you, Mr. President.
Absolutely. Madam Clerk, I do believe Councilor Whitfield is also joining us. If we could just acknowledge her when she gets on, it'd be greatly appreciated.
Okay.
In fact, it might make sense for us just to wait a moment before the petitioners get started, knowing that she is logging on.
I'm on.
You're on. Okay.
Counselor Whitfield?
Here.
Here.
Thank you. Is there anyone present to speak on behalf of the petitioners? Please state your name and address for the record.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Paul Karen, and I represent Salima Management Group, Dunkin' Donuts franchisee here in Western Mass. What you have before you tonight is a special permit application for 705 Liberty Street. We've worked with the neighborhood council, and this is not a new petition. It was originally filed and approved almost 2 years ago. There was a number of issues that held up us actually filing it, so we had to refile for another special permit as the prior one has expired. We worked with the Hungry Hill Civic Association, Councilor Fenton, in reclaiming an old gas station that has been a blight on the neighborhood. This is a state-of-the-art new Dunkin' Donuts that will be built at 705 Liberty Street. And we've waited an awful long time, and I know the neighborhood has as well. Nothing has changed. This is the same proposal and the same plan that had been originally filed and approved. It has the support of the Hungry Hill Civic Association, as evidenced by the letter of support that they had submitted in favor of the special permit. At this time, I'd like to introduce Rob Levesque from our Levesque Associates to discuss the details of the plan, but we'd appreciate your support. I know everyone is itching to get back to work. I know we have local people that want to be employed, local contractors, and we're ready to start and bring a new Dunkin' Donuts to Hungry Hill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Representative Karen. Mr. Levesque, can you please state your name and address for the record?
Yes, sir, Mr. President. Thank you. Thank you, councilors. Rob Levesque from our Levesque Associates, again here this evening representing Realty. Also with us this evening on the call is Peter Martins, could be available as necessary to answer any logistical issues that we may run into or any questions that you may have from a logistical standpoint with the Dunkin' itself. So thank you again. If it's okay with your gentleman running the meeting, I would like to share my screen.
Can you please submit that to the clerk for the record? I'm not 100% sure how we do that, Attorney Davis.
If you, Mr. Levesque, if you could just email that to me when you have a moment, I can put it on the record. I'll make sure that you receive my email address.
Yep, it's already been emailed to Mr. Dromey ahead of time.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I'll be sharing the same document that we shared with Mr. Dromey.
Thank you. You should be good to share, Mr. Levesque.
Very good. Thank you very much. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay. So thank you very much. This is Liberty Street located right here. This is Phoenix. This is the intersection of Liberty and Phoenix. My plan is oriented north, as you can see on the north arrow on the left-hand side. The site is kind of a polygon shape directly adjacent to the shopping plaza just to the south. The proposal that we have before you is for approximately a 2,000 square foot Dunkin' Donuts restaurant with a patron use area inside, but obviously with the typical drive-through that you see. Again, you have seen this before, very similar to what you've seen before. We have resubmitted this, but essentially the same programming exists where we have a curb cut along the south side, two-way traffic coming in, parking adjacent to the building. The main entrance of the building would be here. We have two handicap van accessible spaces here. And then as we continue around the site, we've separated the drive-through traffic from the overall site circulation as much as possible, providing approximately 11 to 12 stacking spaces before you get to the any potential vehicular conflict within the site here. So it works quite nicely where the drive-through pickup window is here. The order window is back, and they'll be ordering before they traverse this little intersection here, and then we'll be coming out the site. We have two-way, we have exit in either direction onto Liberty Street. So as mentioned, this is again something that you've seen before, but very similar. We've resubmitted to the DPW as well. We did receive a letter, I believe it was dated April 30th, at which point DPW did give us a conditional approval, provided that we just handle a couple of housekeeping items that they had, which is no problem. We reviewed those and understand those. So with that, be happy to answer any questions the counselors may have.
Thank you, Mr. Levesque. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Say again, is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Madam Clerk, have we received any testimony of anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this petition?
No, we have not.
Seeing none, we will now open it up for questions of the petitioners. Are there any questions from counselors? And if you could please raise your hand in the queue, it would be greatly appreciated. Counselor Ramos, followed by Counselor Fan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just wondering in terms of the timeline, what is your timeline?
So Peter Martins is with us this evening. I don't want to put him on the spot because I'm not sure if he's quite unmuted yet, but if Mr. Martins could be recognized, Mr. President.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mr. President. Peter Martins, 5 Stonington Drive, Wolverhampton, Mass.
Thank you.
Thanks. In regards to the timeline, it's unfortunately a little bit up in the air right now with things the way they are. We'll be ready to start really, but it'll depend on how construction is able to be set up. If we can have enough people working together on that small property, et cetera. So really, I'll be ready to go if and when we have the approval again for the special permit. But really, it's going to depend on where we are with things in general with the pandemic going on. So I really all I can say is that we'll be ready to go. We'll have the subs picked out and the contractors picked out and things lined up. Our lease goes through the end of September at the gas station. This will obviously be a relocation from the gas station across the street. So we have that lease. So I would probably time it to be done with construction at the time that the lease is really up. But again, it's going to depend a little bit over the next few weeks how things shake out and whether we'll be able to get started or not in time to finish before the winter sets in. So I know it's not really an answer, and unfortunately, I just don't have it right now. It's really a week at a time. I'm lining things up to be ready to go. If things relax and we're good to go, but we'll see what happens.
It sounds like the goal is to be open this year, to complete the project and be open this year.
That's
right. Okay. All right. Well, Mr. President, I supported this the last time around, and I'm ready to support it this evening as well. I know that the ward councilor Fenton is going to speak next, so I'll yield to him. But I just want to say that I support the project.
Thank you, Councilor Fenton, followed by Councilor Walsh. You have to unmute yourself, Councilor Fenton.
Thank you. Usually better about that. So thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to Paul, Rob Levesque and his team, as well as Peter Martins and his team. They've been really great partners with the neighborhood. This is a permit that we have approved, so I don't have any objection. We supported it last time. My only question is that on the packet that we received, the hours of operation that we agreed to last time weren't there. So at the conclusion, after the conclusion of the hearing, I'm going to make a motion that the lobby operations be allowed to be open from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. and the drive-up window be allowed to operate from 5 a.m. to 12 a.m. That shouldn't be too much of a surprise to the applicant because that's what we did last time, but I wanted to just make sure that if there were any objections to that, you had a chance to respond.
Thank you, Councilor Fenton. Does any of the petitioners, would you like to respond to that?
I can just say that's fine. That works fine. That's what we had agreed to. You're right. So I'm not sure why it's not in there, but that's what we had discussed. So it works for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Fenton. We will certainly entertain a motion to add that condition at our next meeting once we close the hearing. Councilor Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I have to say, Paul, I did not recognize you, but recognized your voice. I'm very happy to hear you talk about jobs because I think we're all very cognizant of what's going on right now. And I'm wondering how many people you would actually hire and will they be from the neighborhood?
Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, we obviously this is a relocation, so some or as many as want to come over from across the street will come over. We'll need to hire probably 8 to 10 additional ones because it being a freestanding store and needing the 2 people on at all times, et cetera, probably anywhere from 8 to 10 or so new ones. And as usual, we like to hire from as close as possible to the store. It usually works out well. A lot of these are kids that can walk to work, don't have to walk too far. Selfishly, it's a good thing for us because it's a better chance of people coming into work and the kids being able to come into work. It just increases the pool size because if kids don't need a ride, et cetera. So our goal is always to hire from as close to the physical location as possible. And then we start to go out from there as needed, but it's always to hire as close as possible.
Okay, thank you. And I really was quite impressed that you guys were able to put up that rendering on our screen. That was very impressive. And Mr. President, I'd like to say that I think the Dunkin' Donuts team, the three gentlemen that are here tonight, they really set the bar for petitioners that come before our Springfield City Council, because they do everything right. I know you've had several of these petitions across the city. You always work with the neighborhood council, you always work with the neighbors, you always make sure that anybody who has anything to say says it, and you seem to get rid of any problems before this comes to us. And I think future petitioners should take a page out of your book, and I'm very happy to support you tonight.
Thank you, Councilor Walsh. Councilor Gomez, I think I had you next in the queue. I just want to make sure that I wasn't the one who lowered your hand, if you still had a question.
Yeah, I had, probably you did, but it's all good. Thank you so much. My question was, how many parking spots are going to be? I know I supported this last time. I just want to go back to how many parking spots are you guys going to be creating in this location, sir?
Yes, sir. Through the chair or through the president?
Yes.
Yes, sir. So we are creating 19 parking spaces. There's 8 along the south side, if you can see my screen. There's 5 here and back, and then another 6 on the north side.
Fantastic. Honestly, some of my constituents there on Clantoid had asked me what was going on and what was the time frame. So I know Councilor Ramos and then Councilor Fenton spoke to those different things. So that's all I wanted to say. And just to, I always like to throw just a little bit of love for Ward 1 that Dunkin' Donuts has for it, because this is going to be, even me and myself and Councilor Fenton hug that line on Phoenix Street, and this location is actually in Ward 1, but I'm going to leave it in Ward 2 because that's where it belongs. But Dunkin' has done such a great job, specific to the one that we just opened, and they've hired within the community. Then the other one that we had before that one that came online was on Wilbraham Road. And honestly, you have been a great partner to the city of Springfield. You make sure, because a lot of the folks that you do hire, I know a lot of these folks, not that I got them the job, but they got the jobs themselves, and you do hire within the community. And that is very commendable and respectful. And we thank you for consistently partnering with all of our communities. Thank you, sir. And thank you, Paul, and the gentleman that shared that photograph. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Gomez. We have Councilor Allen, followed by Councilor Davila.
Thanks, Mr. President. Yeah, I have a question on the traffic flow, just a small question. So without looking at the picture, just the way I saw, I mean, I looked at the picture, but just trying to understand. So you come into the property, into the drive-through off of Liberty, and you exit onto Phoenix Terrace, is that correct?
That is correct. I apologize. I'm trying to share my screen. I seem to have gotten locked out.
That's all right. I just assumed just talk about it because
here we go. Here we go. Sorry. There you go. Yeah, so there will be no access onto Phoenix Street. So all circulation will come and go counterclockwise off of Liberty, back through, and then back out. And then there's a exit lane going north and an exit lane going south.
So both the access to the property and the exit from the property are both on Liberty Street?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's where I was confused. I thought, the way I read it, that it was going out on Phoenix Street, Phoenix Terrace, and I was a little concerned about that. Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Allen. Councilor Davila.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to start by Mr. Levesque. You did a very good presentation. Thank you for that. And I do believe that this is going to be a good addition to the neighborhood. you're going to be replacing an old blighted property and putting it into the tax rolls, and the companies for that. I just have some clarified questions, if I may, though. Sticking with the issue of the traffic flow, so I'm trying to visualize here, if all the traffic is going to go from Liberty and back out into Liberty, as it relates to one, the gas station, and two, the rotary, which we all know could get very hectic. You don't see a little bit of a bottleneck that may happen there?
So, excuse me, Counselor, the question was related to a bottleneck at which intersection?
No, it's on Liberty Street, because as I'm trying to think, you have the gas station and then you have the traffic. I'm just wondering why not have the traffic go into Phoenix Street? Because I know that traffic could get at times very, very hectic over there.
With Liberty being an arterial street, we felt that it was logical to come in and out. Mm-hmm. One of the opportunities that we had to go out to Liberty Street would have put us fairly near the intersection. A lot of this traffic is pass-by trips that exist already, as mentioned by Mr. Martins. The existing Dunkin' across the street will be closed up, and this will replace that. So the traffic really exists already on Liberty. We would hope for a little bit of a bump in the use here. However, we feel like it'll be a reasonable addition to the neighborhood. When we first went through this, we did look at this closely with DPW the first time around, because they did have specific questions. Specifically, Chris Signoli had questions that we had addressed related to stacking and whatnot, and we had satisfied those concerns. So Phoenix is just a tough spot to get out. We don't have a lot of frontage on Phoenix. Also eat up those 6 parking spaces that are key to making the site work.
Again, my final question is, I think Mr. Martin kind of touched up on it. If I understood correctly, you're hoping this property to be up and running by September. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct. Yes, sir.
Now, just trying to think and I know the coronavirus situation is a very fluid situation. So somebody did allude before in regards to construction. How many people do you expect to have at any given time in that site? I'm assuming they're going to have the proper equipment, but is that going to fall out of or is that going to be included with the new plan to have 10 people more in construction?
Yeah, Mr. Martins, and I could, only because he's probably muted, I could answer for that. They have the standard, they have repeat contractors that they use on many of these stores. As you know, they have upwards of 50 stores by now. As part of their construction work, they typically use the same general contractor and the same site contractor who they're very familiar with. They are all very careful and all obviously have to adhere to all of the different new COVID-19 requirements, not to mention the normal construction requirements for safety, OSHA, et cetera. So with the new information that has come out this week, I'm sure Mr. Martins, as he had suggested, is not going to rush out onto the site before they really get a comfort level that they can provide safety to not only the other employees, but also Mr. Martins' employees as well.
Very well. Mr. President, I'm very excited with this project. Like I said at the beginning, it's going to be a great addition to the neighborhood. I will be voting to support this project. And once again, my compliments to all of you for a great presentation and for being such a great partner in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Davila, Councilor Brown, followed by Councilor Gomez.
Definitely love the program. I just have one question as far as you're doing an excellent job. Did you have an opportunity to how much have you worked with the actual ward counselor?
I'll let Mr. I'm sorry, Mr. Karen answer that.
Representative Karen.
Yeah, as is our policy, whenever Duncan has a new proposal I serve as a community liaison and outreach to neighborhood councils and the neighborhood counselor, ward counselor as well. Right as soon as we had purchased the property and had an option to turn it into a Dunkin' Donuts in Hungry Hill, I reached out to Councilor Fenton, and so we've had conversations over the last 2 years and several meetings with the neighborhood council as well. That's what the Dunkin' Donuts does. They make sure they get the input from the neighborhood council and the neighborhood counselors as well.
And Councilor Fenton is in approval?
Councilor Fenton.
Yes, very much so. As Councilor Gomez pointed out earlier, when he pointed that out, I actually pulled up the ward map, and he is right about that side of Clantoy Street and Ward 1 taking the Price Right and Taco Bell and that one side, I don't know whether it's the even or odd side of Clantoy Street up to that intersection with Phoenix Street. He's right about that.
So if it's, to me, it's not even a discussion. Councilor Fenton, I know he does his due diligence as far as making sure that certain organizations do what they need to do in their district. And I'll follow his lead. I commend you. That's my only question. Thank you for your service, and we definitely need your business in our community.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. Councilor Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, just to talk a little bit more. These are just one of those areas where there are fine lines, you know, really, it's kind of a joint neighborhood, you know, how I call it, because I had the same stipulation with the gas station that was right there around Gasoline Alley, that was on Armory, that hugged at the time then Councilor Twiggs, that's right there at the corner of Taylor and Worthington, but it fell into the jurisdiction of the what's that neighborhood? McKnight Neighborhood Council. And I had worked with the McKnight Neighborhood Council and with the ward councilor at that time. And we've already have approved this, so I guess this is just, you know, something down the line. But Councilor Davila kind of made me realize and recognize something in that corner, because obviously that's a real transit area specific to the traffic flow. I know that Councilor Allen had spoken to it too. Kind of like light bulb went off. There is a light there, or a number of lights that are in that probably where you enter and exit. I wanted to know if on the petition, if there, maybe Phil can answer this question. Do they have to have a traffic study, or they've already done their traffic study? Because essentially, I know that there is a couple lights that kind of come in and out because they have to mitigate, because there's a lot of entrances in this area. So there's the gas station, there's McDonald's, and also where the Save-A-Lot parking lot is, there's another light that kind of help traffic come in and out of there. Because the petitioner is correct that it is kind of hard on Phoenix to come in and out of there sometimes, because and that congestion only exists kind of in the morning and rush hour. But that was just one question on that flow. And for reasons upon my own, maybe obviously you never talk to the person that owns a Save-A-Lot on having the entrance kind of coming in through the Save-A-Lot parking lot versus, you know, it's still having the exit. But I don't know if that was spoken about, or is it just makes it easier for you guys to have it the way you guys have it set up there?
Mr. Levesque or Phil, did you?
Well,
go ahead, Phil.
Or you want to?
No, that's okay. Thanks.
Well, I'm just going to say that, you know, this was an issue that was brought up when it was originally being designed a couple of years ago. DPW had some similar concerns about that light that's right there by the gas station. But from my understanding, and Rob can certainly chime in, DPW through the traffic submission and design were approved the exits that are coming out. But that was an issue that DPW did look into when it was originally proposed.
Thank you, Phil. Mr. Levesque, did you want to add anything?
Mr. President, that is accurate. I believe the first time around we looked closely at this with Mr. Signoli and his team, at which time I believe they, with the information provided, were comfortable. Second go round here, as we've submitted, was essentially the same programming. So there was really just a look, I believe, at the specifics of the site itself, with the understanding that it had already been through full, traffic look at the intersections during the last go round.
Thank you, Mr. Levesque.
No problem. That's fine. I just wanted to get a little bit more clear picture on that because I know we had talked about it in the beginning and we didn't talk about it again. And essentially they got the study already done. So, all right, great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Councilor Fenton, on your work on this and to the petitioner. I plan to support this today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gomez. Councilor Ramos.
I just wanted to say for the record that Dunkin' Donuts is welcome in Indian Orchard too. We would love to have Dunkin' Donuts in Indian Orchard, so don't forget about us.
We were close. We were close.
Thank you, Councilor Ramos. If there are no further questions in the council, I just want to remind you that because there is no one speaking in opposition to this petition, unless someone hears something from this hearing and speaks at our next meeting, my hope is that everything that everyone has expressed and asked here today will be it, so that we can expedite the meeting that we have, this item will show up before our general meeting or before our regular meeting on June 1st. So I've opened it up for questions a little early, so I'm hopeful that you guys will respect that when it shows up at our next meeting. So without seeing any more questions, is there a counselor that can make a motion to continue this item to our next meeting?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilor Gomez. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Whitfield. Madam Clerk, I believe you need to call the roll on this as well. Is that accurate?
Yes. On continuing the public hearing, Councilor Gomez?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Whitfield?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Davila?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Fenton?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Curran?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ramos?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Walsh?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Williams?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Allen?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Letterman?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Edwards?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Brown?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Hurst?
Yes. This item will be continued to our next meeting. And if there is no one wishing to speak in opposition or rebut anything that has been said here, we will close the hearing and then we will entertain any discussion from the council, which will probably be minimal, and then we will take a vote, and that will occur on June 1st. So thank you so much. Very successful first item during our Herons meeting. So thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank Phil Dromey and Chris Signoli and their teams. They've been doing a great job on not only this application, but others in this crazy time. It's been really weird, really weird time, but they're keeping everything moving. It's nice to see, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
And we apologize for the delay. We certainly didn't anticipate this either. So
we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Madam Clerk, will you please call the next item?
The next item on the agenda is a special permit for motor vehicle sales at 1103, 1107 State Street.
Thank you. The proponents will have 20 minutes to speak in favor of this special permit, followed by those in opposition to this special permit, which it appears that we have not heard from anyone in opposition to this special permit. And then similar to the last agenda item, we will entertain questions from the council. Then we will ask for a motion to continue this. Is there anyone present to speak on behalf of the petitioners? And I know Councilor Brown, you had asked a question, but I believe we have an individual here who is willing to speak on behalf of the petitioners. Mr. Gavey, can you please state your name and address for the record?
5 Worthington Street, Springfield, Mass.
Can you please repeat that again, Mr. Gavey?
1105 Worthington Street, Springfield. And I've been working with the petitioner for a number of months, probably most of a year, getting this proposal ready. The essence of it is that there's a lot, or former lot, on the side of the property facing Dresden Street, which the petitioner some time ago, and which he wishes to use as a parking lot for the display of used using by Stephen Roberts up on Bay Street, and getting a design done by the engineer so that we have the drainage so that it doesn't burden the street drainage system. And we think that it will be a positive contribution to the community. The owner had asked me, and particularly Councilor Brown, to speak. I'm sure he has some comments he'd like to make. But that's the essence of it, except that one of the features, he has on several businesses or several activities on that site, including a gas station and a car repair operation where they do stickers and other kinds of car repairs. And he has a tire recycling facility at the rear you can barely see. And we think it's a good land use. We'd like to see him keeping the site clean. And we think that's a positive service to the community. We'd like to see the council support. So I'll leave it at that unless there's questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gavey. And so since I do not see anyone else here looking to speak on behalf of the petitioners, Councilor Brown, I know you wanted to say a few words, so I certainly will open up the questions and or comments to you first.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to first thank you for your leadership and your guidance during this coronavirus and this epidemic. You've been doing an excellent job. I've met with the petitioner. I know him not well as far as personally, but I know what he's done for the community. It's a little funny when it comes to environments. When it comes to litter, one of my main components was to be able to have the fight against litter. This man, not only has he had to put a fight toward litter, we know in a lot of societies, when it comes to me having a flat tire and paying $20 for someone to dispose of it, it's not going to happen. What he does is they, in our community, they give him waste as far as tires. He's been a pillar. And right now it's about him redesigning the community right there on Dresden. And I've spoken with him, and I'm trying to do a litter campaign when it comes right there in the Mason Square area. Me and State Rep Bud Williams, we spoke with him. We're looking for him. He's doing a repavement right there. He's been there for over 20 years. He's paid probably over $100,000 of redevelopment, and he's trying to do maybe another 70,000 of his own money. I don't want to hinder anyone. He doesn't have as much money as all of us. I mean, I don't have any money. As Mr. Pulsifer, he doesn't have a lot of money, but he does a lot of his own, a lot of the stuff he's doing is his own resources. So I just want everyone to realize that a lot of times it's a little bit funny when it comes to certain permits. It's in the inner city. I went by, he redid fencing. He's making sure that everything is state of the art. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to rebuild things in Ward 4. So I've been working with him and trying to show him that we got to get a little bit better, but it's something we need. So I would just say to my colleagues and Mr. President, if you guys can really support this guy, this is something that we need.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Gaby, who is speaking on behalf of the petitioner, and/or potentially Councilor Brown regarding this petition, or Phil Dromey? Councilor Letterman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Either for yourself or Councilor Brown or Phil, did the petitioner send word as to why he was unable to appear for the hearing today?
The reason why he wasn't able to appear today is because he wasn't really able to have the proper notification. And he was a colleague, and like I said, I don't know him personally, but I know the work that he does in the community. A lot of times in Ward 4 and in a lot of the communities that are minorities, they're not able to properly articulate what they need to do in order to get what they need. And a lot of times they're even scared to do it. That's why I was elected to represent him. So I met with him. I'm very confident in who he is. He's been someone who's helped the community, and not just the community, he's helped a lot of people throughout the years. He's been there for 20 years. So sometimes you have some people who can't speak our language. That's why he elected me. But that's the only reason. It was something on our end. It was our mistake. And I do apologize.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. Phil, can you just speak to the notice issue and whether you've had conversations with the petitioner himself?
Well, I mean, obviously notice was sent out 2 weeks ago as part of the legal requirements, but just so everybody's clear on the council, the representative I've been dealing with from day one is Mr. Gaby. So Mr. Gaby's been doing the paperwork. He's been providing me the plans. So I have been in contact with Mr. Gaby about the process and the hearing. So
and one thing you guys,
we're going to get to you, Councilor Brown. Phil, can you continue? Councilor Brown, hold on 1 second for me.
Yeah, so I just, I've been, my correspondence about the special permit have been going through Mr. Gaby, who, from my understandings with the emails, have been contacting with the owner of the property.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. Did you want to add to that?
Yes, and I apologize Mr. President.
No, you're
I do
fine.
apologize. And what I would just reiterate to Phil, like I did explain to him, is that at 12 p.m., 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 3 p.m., it's okay for him to contact me. My full-time job is politics, and Ward 4 is where I live. So if there's something that he needs to reiterate that he needs as far as that will help my constituents, I'm always available. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a gas station attendant. I do politics. So I wasn't informed on this, and Mr. Gaby wasn't somebody he shouldn't inform. I am available. My phone number, Phil, 413-316-4743.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. Councilor Davila, you had a question, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Phil, couple of follow-up questions here, if I may. Looking over at the reports, the recommendation that was given by the planning team is that by March 30th, if approved by March 30th, the deficiencies have to be corrected. So I guess it's a two-part question. One, as of today, have your concerns been addressed in terms of the deficiencies on the property? And two, how do we adjust this March 30th date given the current situation with the pandemic?
Well, as noted, the original special, this was to be originally heard back on March. I have my calendar in front of me. The hearing in March, but obviously that hearing was canceled. So at that time, I had visited the site. As you can see in the pictures, there were a number of issues, including some, debris on the site. There was a number of unregistered vehicles. That has all been taken care of. So I'm very pleased that the site has been cleaned up very nicely. The only kind of outstanding issue that I still have, or at least code enforcement and the zoning administrator has, is the fact that there's a tractor trailer parked on the site. Again, we can argue about whether it's appropriate or not, but under the current zoning ordinance, a tractor trailer is not allowed. The owner of the property was notified about this several months ago. So, as I do with all special permits, we run to make sure that any issues that are outstanding are dealt with. That certainly does not prohibit the city council from moving forward and approving it if that's the prerogative of the council. I would just at some point, the tractor trailer issue needs to be resolved, whether that's through a variance from the Board of Appeals that allows them to keep it there, or he looks at a different storage container that would allow him to do what he's doing there with the tractor. It's my understanding that that's where he stores the used tires, and then it gets, I'm assuming, transferred to a recycling facility at a certain point. But again, under the current zoning ordinance, a tractor trailer body is not allowed. So
the only thing, the only concern that we have right now is just the tractor trailer on site right now, correct?
Right. Yeah. The site itself was cleaned up very nicely, so I have no issue with the condition of the property.
Okay, and it might be on the paperwork, but the actual ground is paved, correct?
Well, no, it hasn't been paved yet. That's his proposal to pave it. Right now, it's just there used to be a house on it. It's been demolished. So as part of the special permit and the display of the cars, which he wants to do there, it is going to require him to pave the lot. But he has submitted a plan that shows that he's going to pave it and landscape it. So I have no issue with what's been proposed as far as the site plan.
And just to be clear, this is just for vehicle sale, no auto work.
Correct. It's to allow them to sell up to 5 used vehicles.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Sure. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Davila. Councilor Brown, you have your hand raised in the queue, sir, followed by Councilor Gomez.
And one thing I would want to still raise to my colleagues as far as this goes is that this is an individual who's been there for over 20 years. He's spent over 100,000 already. He's about to spend another 70. He isn't, for us to sit there and stop someone who want to stop an individual for investing in his community, to me, is just outrageous. I've met with the individual. I'm from the community. I'm the ward counselor. I know who he is. I feel confident. A lot of times what happens, I believe in this situation, is the administration doesn't understand that certain inner city things that we feel that are promising might hinder us. So I just would ask our colleagues to go forward with this. He's done everything he needed to do.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. Councilor Gomez.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Just a question for Phil. Phil, you had stated that there was a house on top of this property. Just a quick question, not for any reason. Does this property need a zone change so he can do that type of business on there? Is it zoned appropriately?
No, I mean, the property was zoned, even when the house was there, it was zoned Business A, so.
Oh, okay, okay, perfect.
The zoning is correct.
All right, just wanted to clarify that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Gomez. Councilor Fenton.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Councilor Brown, for your efforts on this. Certainly want to follow the ward councilor's lead and appreciate the insights that you've provided. So I want to support this application, but I have to get some clarity on one point, and that is regarding the identity of the petitioner and his lack of attendance. Mr. Gaby said during his testimony a few times that we are in support of it, and I think he was talking about the neighborhood council, but that wasn't particularly clear to me. So I understand that Mr. Gaby might be acting as the agent for this individual, but one of the real benefits of the hearings is that the petitioner be here either themselves or through a direct agent or representative of their business, so that they can see the feedback provided not just by the planning department, but also, as we heard in this particular case, by the ward counselor. So, Mr. Gaby, are you an agent of the petitioner, or are you speaking on behalf of the petitioner and the neighborhood council? What's
I'm not on behalf of the neighborhood council. I'm speaking on behalf of the petitioner specifically.
If I might, Mr. President.
Hold on, Councilor Gomez. Mr. Gaby has the floor, and then I'll get to you right after Mr. Gaby.
That wasn't me.
Did I say Councilor Gomez? Councilor Brown. Sorry,
No,
Mr.
Gaby. I apologize.
That's all right. The floor is yours, Mr. Gaby, and then we'll get right to you, Mr. Brown. Councilor Brown.
Just to be clear, Bill Dromey was correct, very correctly. He has been keeping me in the loop, and the issue of the trailer has been raised on numerous occasions, and in fact, has been the subject of many discussions. The interesting part in relative to your discussion of where's the petitioner is that up until 4 o'clock this afternoon, we were being told that it's going to be tabled, do not come. So he was not prepared to come, and Mr. Brown, Councilor Brown and I volunteered to present the situation for the council. I'm sure if there's a meeting in June, he would be happy to attend.
Will that be possible, Mr. President?
That I'll defer to the clerk on this one. I have to believe that I don't see why it wouldn't be, but I'll defer to Attorney Davis.
Yes, if the council president is willing to allow him to enter and to speak on like basically in favor of the petition and as the petitioner, he should be all set.
Yeah,
All right,
I think considering everything that we've heard today, that was going to be my recommendation and suggestion. He actually has the benefit of us doing this remotely and the hearings having to be continued and then us not necessarily closing the hearing until our next meeting. So we will certainly have an opportunity to be present. And Dave and Councilor Brown, you can let them know that it will be June 1st. It will be back on the agenda and it will be, we'll get to you with respect to the time.
Yes.
I haven't solidified that. So Councilor Brown, sure, sir.
If I may answer Councilor Fenton's, one thing about where I come from, Councilor Fenton, is it might be maybe like if you had like a grandmother or if you come from like a minority descent, is sometimes they can't explain it. I've met with this individual for a long time. So as far as Councilor Gaby, David Gaby being his spokesperson, the only reason why the actual individual did not come today is because I told him he didn't have to. I would speak for him. I feel comfortable enough that my colleagues would feel comfortable enough as far as me sitting there and explaining who he was. I know who he is. He's been in my community forever. It's a different environment. Now, as far as David Gaby, I didn't have him come and speak. That wasn't my requirement. I didn't tell the guy to do that. They asked me as his ward counselor, knowing he's been there for over 20 years. He's been there for 20 years. Okay, he spent over $100,000 and he's about to spend another 75. I trust him. He keeps the community clean. He doesn't have a lot of money. I got murdered when I first got here talking about Pulsifer helping my community, and people thought that I called my community hood, meaning that I didn't love it. This guy lives here. He doesn't have Pulsifer money. I vouch for him. I'm just asking my colleagues, I don't need a table. I'm here. I know who these guys are. They've helped so many people. All I'm asking for is to support him. I told him, I know you guys. I know he's doing the right thing. He's been doing the right thing. He want to clean up the community even a little bit more. He's in for my actual getting the actual inner city clean. That's what he's trying to do. I'm just asking you guys to support me. I need your support.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. I appreciate it.
Mr. President, motion to continue.
There is a motion on the floor.
Mr. President, I have my hand up.
Yes, I see there are a number of hands raised in the queue. Gosh, you guys are making me. I have to be on my game here. I didn't quite anticipate that. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second to that motion? As we'll entertain the motions first and dispose of them. If there's a second. There's a motion on the floor to continue the item. There's a second by Councilor Williams. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chair, I have discussion on the motion.
Okay, there is discussion on the motion. So
Certainly.
we will go to those that have not spoken yet, and that will be Counselor Walsh, followed by Counselor Whitfield.
Mr.
and
President,
then-
just a point of order. Point of order.
Yes, yes.
Are we having discussion on the motion to continue, or are we having discussion on the application?
You are having discussion on the motion to continue. Help me out, Madam Clerk.
I want to talk about the motion. I want to talk about the project.
Do we need to entertain the motion first?
The counselor that made the motion can withdraw the motion so you guys can continue speaking about the petition.
So,
I withdraw the motion. I just I did not see the queue, and I apologize to the councilors that had their hand raised. I thought when he was done speaking, I was just gonna move to continue, because regardless, we have to continue the matter. And I know that a lot of individuals want to see the gentleman here, and I know that we're supportive of the project, or some of us are. But I just thought we were at that tail end, and I apologize for jumping ahead to all my colleagues. I'll withdraw my motion, and when the time is appropriate, I will make the motion to continue.
So Councilor Gomez has withdrawn this motion. There are a number of hands raised in the queue, and I think it would be appropriate for us to entertain those hands before we make any motions, although it certainly is the council's prerogative to do so. Councilor Walsh, followed by Councilor Whitfield.
Thank you, Mr. President. It sounds like a good project, and I certainly appreciate the individual's investment in the community, but I always feel more comfortable when I can actually see the petitioner. I think all of us would feel better if he could be present, but I do understand that I myself thought that this item was going to be either tabled or not discussed, so there's probably a little leeway on both sides, but I hope that everyone will be present when we vote in June. And Councilor Brown, he's lucky to have you as a friend.
Thank you, Councilor Walsh. Councilor Whitfield.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was just a little bit confused on who's representing the petitioner here, if it was David Gavey or Councilor Brown. And I didn't know how this was supposed to work, if they are here representing the petitioner.
Both of us.
If they're can you not interrupt me? If they're representing the petitioner, can they also vote on this item? Like, I'm not really sure how this is working.
Phil, can you let us know who is representing the petitioner? And then Attorney Moore, if you can speak to the legal question as to whether somebody can represent the petitioner and also vote vote on the actual issue.
And that wasn't all I had. So once that's answered, okay, thank you.
I got you.
I mean, again, I can only say that I have been dealing with Mr. Gavey. Again, he's the one who took out the application. He's the one who filled it out. He's the one who had the plans drawn. So, to me, it's as if, to me, he is the representative of the petitioner. Just like if someone wanted to hire a lawyer or someone wanted to hire Paul Karen as a liaison. That's how I was dealing with the petitioner, as David Gavey acting as a representative. That's all I can.
If I may ask.
Thank you, Phil. Councilor Brown, if you could hold on until Attorney Moore has answered the question, and then we'll let Councilor Whitfield finish her question. And then if you have something that you want to say in response, then I will certainly entertain that, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm glad you gave me the floor just for a moment. I think it's important for the council to all remember when we're engaged as a special permit granting authority that we are now. We're not the legislative body of the city. You're a quasi-judicial body. So it's as if you are a judge in a judicial proceeding in a hearing. You're supposed to take in evidence and testimony and documents you received during the hearing. And then you're going to make a decision based on people who are participating in the hearing as judicial parties are not allowed to be petitioners or represent petitioners. They're not allowed to advocate for the petitioner as if they're part of a project and then vote on that project. So at this point, my advice is going to be, Councilor Brown's going to have to recuse himself. And, if he's had that kind of direct contact with the developer, they've had discussions about him representing them before this body. I don't see there's any way that he can actually take a vote on this, and he really shouldn't be participating other than to perhaps say that he's the ward counselor and this is in his ward. I did not realize that this was going to be the type of presentation we're going to receive tonight, so I wish I had gotten ahead of that. That's my, perhaps my mistake, but I'll give you that advice now, and that's probably the way I'll let it stand, and that goes to all counselors for all hearings. When you're in a hearing, no longer a city councilor voting as a legislative member, you're a quasi-judicial party similar to a judge.
So, Attorney Moore, what would your recommendation be at this point in time for Councilor Brown, considering everything that has played out during this hearing?
Well, I think it's a good question. I'm glad you asked that. What I would say is, given the circumstances, and this is all new to what we've been dealing with the kind of remote participation and how we're handling these hearings in kind of two-tiered meetings. I think, if Councilor Brown basically just kind of makes the statement now that he's going to do the recusal based on what we were just discussing, then I think it's totally fine for the body to sort of take in the remainder of the evidence that's going to be before the petitioner themselves is to appear, hopefully, at that second hearing. At that point, we can proceed forward, and I would guess put a notation within the hearing that, there was a discussion that occurred before the recusal and let it stand at that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure it taints the whole proceeding. I think at this point the petitioner's not here. We should give them the benefit of the doubt to be here and speak. So I think it's worthwhile to at least keep this going to the next hearing and allow them that opportunity.
So I think Councilor Brown has recused himself, as I believe he is no longer in the meeting. Councilor Whitfield, did you have any further questions?
I didn't have any further questions. I did have a comment that while, we might trust individuals and they may seem trustworthy and they may really know the petitioner and folks that they're talking about, I would still like to hear from the petitioner myself to ask direct questions to see exactly what he's done in the neighborhood, because I grew up in the neighborhood and I don't know exactly what was done by the petitioner in the neighborhood. And so hearing his direct testimony on what he's done and making sure everything's going to be cleaned up, because I did read the notes from the team, from Bill's team, and I want to make, regardless of how much work you do in the community, we still want to make sure it's clean and that it's safe. And so I just want to make sure that it's cleaned up and figure out what's going to go on with the trailer. And once that is clarified, I will be in support of the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Whitfield. Councilor Letterman, thank you for your patience. I know you have been waiting, followed by Councilor Davila.
No problem, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would just say I'm encouraged to hear from Mr. Dromey that there's been progress made towards cleaning up the lot. We certainly want to be able to support small business when possible and also support the community. And part of that process of supporting the community is doing our jobs and due diligence to make sure that when we permit certain types of businesses that they are going to be a benefit to the community. So my question ahead of the June hearing, when we continue this on, perhaps Mr. Gaby can convey this to the petitioner, is it seems like in Mr. Dromey's recommended attachments to the special permit that there are some particularly large requirements in terms of ensuring that there is a full paving and landscape installation at the site. And so I just want to make sure that the petitioner and his representatives are aware that that is a condition, and also, just that they're in a strong position to be able to carry that out and understand that the permit won't be granted in totality until those conditions are met.
I don't know.
Go ahead, Phil.
Well, I was just going to say, you know, a full plan was submitted. So obviously, they have not started the pavement work, because I'm assuming they're waiting to see if they get the special permit. But all paving jobs do have to be reviewed by DPW, and they have submitted a plan that shows that it will be paved and landscaped, which I was pleased with the plan. So I think they're aware of the fact that they are going to be required to pave the lot in order to use it for parking.
Thank you, Phil. Councilor Davila.
Thank you, Mr. President. Attorney Moore has very successfully and accurately addressed my concern. So thank you for that clarification, Attorney Moore. I just want to echo sort of what the other my colleagues have been saying. I think at this point it would be very, very beneficial to speak directly with the petitioner, which I believe, Phil, if correctly, that's Mr. Ahmad Hussein, correct? According to what?
Correct.
Okay, so I personally think it will be very beneficial for him to be here personally. If he chooses to send a representative, that's his prerogative. But I think it will be very beneficial and accurate to get accurate information and the right concerns for him to appear on the June meeting. Other than that, I'm excited to see that there's progress in the neighborhood, and that will continue to improve our economic development. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Davila. If there are no further questions or comments on this issue, can we have a motion to continue this item until our June 1st meeting?
Motion so moved.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Williams, seconded by Councilor Gomez. On the motion, I'm sorry, not on the motion. Attorney Davis, can you please call the roll?
On the motion to continue the public hearing, Councilor Gomez?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Whitfield?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Davila?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Fenton? Absent. Councilor Curran?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ramos?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Walsh?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Williams?
Councilor Williams?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Allen?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Letterman?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Edwards?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Brown? Absent. Councilor Hurst?
Yes. The motion to continue passes. Madam Clerk, is there any further business before the council?
There is no further business before the council.
Seeing none, we will stand adjourned until June 1st. Although, councilors, as a housekeeping note, we have a committee of the whole meeting tomorrow with the Water and Sewer Commission at 11:30. Have a great evening, and thank you. I think this was pretty successful, and thank you to Focus Springfield as well.
Good night.
Thank you, Attorney Moore.
Yes, thank you.
Absolute pleasure.
For the clarification. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.